All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg, and Arlen and I were already getting into it before we even went live. And I don't want to get into fights with you, Arlen. I really, really don't. But if it's going to get to that argument about is Trump the worst, to me, it's so clear he's not. He could be. I'm not saying if he became president and turned himself into a dictator and ended the trappings and vestiges of democracy that we still kind of enjoy, then maybe he would become the worst. But that hasn't happened. And I have to
Well,
go with what people have done, not what they might do in the future when I determine who's the worst president of all time. Like, who's
first
the
of all,
best?
let's not call it a fight. Let's call it a disagreement, okay? When I look at Trump, I think this guy has totally destroyed an entire political party, the Republican Party. They're gone, and now we have a personality cult run by Donald Trump, and I think that's pretty major. That's
You're saying that destroying the party of George W. Bush, the party that normalized torture, you're saying that
well,
that's something that we should mourn and we should condemn Trump because he may be, arguably, in your opinion, stuck a fork in the Republican Party that has done everything possible to corporatize America?
I certainly don't have any love for the Republican Party, definitely, but I'd still rather have George W. Bush or George H.W. Bush uh, being president, because what you have now are just crazy extremists. You have MAGA
How
extremists.
is George W. Bush, sorry to interrupt, but how is George, and I'll try really, really hard, I'm going to do my utmost not to interrupt you. How is George W. Bush not an extremist? Again, this is a guy who normalized torture. He was the one who embraced the PNAC, Project for a New American Century, put us in that war against a country that did no harm to us, that was not involved in 9/11, destroyed Iraq, and we're still 20 years in paying an enormous price for that military adventurism, not to mention the millions dead and displaced in the Middle East as a direct result of that war that was brought to us on lies.
Yeah, I'll give you that. Foreign policy wise, Trump is a lot better than any of the Bushes. But I'm thinking more of domestically and getting things done in the country, and the craziness like of January 6th and all the other awful things, and stealing all the documents, official documents, things like that is what I'm thinking of more than the foreign policy. I will give you the foreign policy.
But does that make him the worst ever? And if we're gonna agree that some of the Trump's foreign policies not only weren't nearly the worst, but in some cases were significantly better than other presidents, then does the fact that yes, this guy's sleazy, I'm not going to deny it. He's low rent. He's an embarrassment. When I watch him on video, I'm astonished that he can be. It's not just that people vote for him, but that they actually embrace him. But I think to me that's more of a indictment of our entire political system, where working people have been told repeatedly for 40 years by both parties, you're on your own. So that to me is why we see Trump, not just because he's some Svengali. He's clearly not. He's kind of lame and pathetic. Ultimately, when you watch him and speaking and such.
Well, I don't want a lame and pathetic president, heading our country. But like you say, we could disagree on the fact that, yeah, foreign policy wise, Trump is not so bad. Domestically, I think he's the worst by far, because he's turned this country into, a crazy extremist. Half the country are crazy extremist MAGA types, part of a personality cult. So,
Well, do you think it's fair to say it's a personality cult and these people have all been hypnotized by Trump? Or is it because, for example, and I've said this many times, and I don't know how many times I have to say it, he has at least acknowledged that the so-called free trade deals that both parties have embraced, that both parties signed off on, that both parties have promoted, have devastated America's heartland, have destroyed cities across the middle of this country and ruined people's lives. Trump has said that. Doesn't
yeah.
doesn't
Well,
that explain as much as anything else why he has a lot of support among working
well,
class Americans?
Well, I'm speaking of again Congress. I don't think it's necessarily a cult there, but they will do whatever he says, whatever he believes in. They will go with him. You know, everybody's afraid of him. Let's face it. He could primary people. He can, you know, he's definitely got control over a big portion of those people of that party. So you know, and that could be very destructive in a lot of ways.
I appreciate that, Arlen. Thank you. And I'm, as you could just tell, really working not to interrupt because that's not fair to you. You're a guest on this program, and it's not fair to the viewers as well, who I know want to hear what you have to say. So I'm going to
Oh, thank
continue to
you, Al.
really step on my tongue as best I can. I know that's an issue I have to work on. You are watching Halitics. I do want you, by the way, if you get a chance, please, if you haven't yet, and our subscription numbers, Arlen, I've been disappointed. Not a lot of viewers. It seems, although I'm a little bit mistrustful of the numbers from YouTube. That said, the subscriber base continues to grow about as slowly as glaciers did before global warming. That is, they grew very, very, very slowly. At least right now, the subscriber base isn't shrinking, but it isn't
Well,
growing either.
media is very tough, Hal. There's just so much out there, so many podcasts, so many all kinds of social media that it's really hard to break through. But you know, maybe in time you will. We hope.
Maybe. That's a good maybe. Let's hope. That's certainly what I hope for. And I'll bring you right along with me, Arlen, or maybe it goes the other way if this program ever does
I'll do
blow
what I
up.
can to help, Hal. Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I cut you off.
I'll just say I'll do what I can to help. What
I
little
appreciate
I
it.
can do.
You've done that for sure. All right, you see the headline there, Trump on trial. We also want to talk about the Middle East meltdown. I used Trump on trial to start the program because of the alliteration. Didn't have Middle East meltdown. I think I had collapse the Middle East or something, but Middle East meltdown would have worked too. But let's start with Trump on trial. Arlen, you're actually, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, you're kind of pleased about this. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it might be able to hurt him in the presidential race, which is good as far as I'm concerned. Uh, yeah, I think this is the first time a U.S. president, a former U.S. president, has ever been on trial, has ever gone to court. So this is historic, and he's going to have to be in court. So you know he's going to probably say some real crazy things, and I'm hoping the country can see that, and especially independents and people that are not totally MAGA might look at that and say, "Hey, this guy really is crazy. He's a criminal." So, I think it's I don't think it's going to help him. I think it'll hurt him. At least I hope so.
Well, I think you're right. I agree with you. And in fact, I want to give you credit for something else, Arlen. You've said this. I've actually said this too. We actually agree on this. We don't think Trump is going to be reelected. At least I don't think you think that. And I look at the polling numbers. They haven't been trending in his direction by any means. If anything, it's pretty much a dead heat right now.
Yeah, there's Biden has inched up a little bit in the polls, and I think that's good. I mean, if he could continue to do that, I mean, still have a lot of time before November. So, I'm hoping anyway that Biden will gradually keep going up, and Trump will keep going down.
I don't want to say the economy is doing particularly well. I don't think it is, but I would say this: it's not doing particularly badly either, and relatively, it's doing okay. So, or even a little better than it has in recent years. So I don't think in the end the economy is going to hurt Biden. I think people are going to look at their choices and going to say, and this is what I, under different circumstances, might say, will not say it, but I think what a lot of voters will say to themselves is Trump is just too far out there. He's just not tethered, and we want someone who is tethered for all of the concerns we have about Joe. He's somewhat moored, and I think that will lead to him winning. Now he might not. We don't know, but that's sort of where I am right now.
I sort of feel that he's just going to get worse as time goes on because of the pressure of all these court cases. Because of all the things that are going on. I think he's worried about has so many things to worry about. And the Biden's running a very good campaign right now. They're kind of showing people the things that Trump has said and done, and they've have a pretty good advertising campaign from what I've heard. Of course, we don't get it in California, but you might get it in Maryland. I don't know.
No, maybe if we saw some Virginia advertising, but
Well,
no,
swing
it's
states is
Maryland is deep blue
concentrate on.
right now.
Yeah.
All right, so trials coming up. Again, one way we do see things differently is I feel like this trial is really an embarrassment. It's a shame to our country. Uh, I wish it weren't happening. But let me play this. There's Jake Tapper. This is from this morning. Okay, so the trial opening, and the correspondent from New York will actually repeat what you said, Arlen. So let's listen a little bit to this.
The courthouse, we have some information about what's going on right now in court regarding the judge and Donald Trump.
By the way, let me just stop it real quick, Arlen, if I can pause it. So you can see the time there. This is less than 2 hours ago, 12:17 p.m. So pretty much breaking news. I got this as late as I could before, as I was preparing for the program.
Jake, we're getting these live updates from our colleagues inside the courtroom, and it appears that the jury selection process is about to officially get underway. The judge is now reading former President Trump his rights. Now, Trump says that he understands this is a pretty solemn moment. This is the first time that a former president of the United States will face criminal trial. And there is, if he is convicted, the possibility of jail time here. Now, again, getting another update from our colleagues. They're saying that prosecutors are now introducing a motion to sanction Trump for his social media posts.
All right, I'm going to stop it there for a second, Arlen. I see you nodding. First of all, she did repeat there, and I'm sorry the woman's name eludes me for the moment, exactly what you said. First time a sitting where a former president has been charged criminally and tried. So that is, again, not something, I feel good about in the least. And also, if he was being tried for the election fraud, I would feel better. To me, I think they have a case. I'm not saying it's not a legitimate case. It is, but it's sleazy. You know what? Or do you disagree? Tell me if you disagree with me.
Well, of course, it would be much better if he was being tried for January 6th and for stealing all the official documents. But, his lawyers have made such a delay, delayed everything and with appeals and all that this is the only one left. So we'll take it. I mean, and certainly the judge has mentioned that he has violated the gag order and he's criticized the judge and his family. So, I wish the judge could throw him in jail for 30 days, but that's not going to happen. But just look at Trump's face. I mean, he's very unhappy. He looks,
well, I mean, who wouldn't be? You're standing trial. He's running for president. He can't think this is going to help him. I'm sure there are some folks who will see him as the completely victimized, the martyr here. But I think most of us can see how, again, sleazy, low rent, those are words that describe for me Donald Trump, not some nefarious, sinister creature. That said, you could be a sleazy, low rent, tin pot tyrant. I mean, he could become, I'm not saying that he couldn't become the worst president if he somehow managed to take control as dictator. And I'm not saying he wouldn't do that, but he's just, to me, he's kind of pathetic. And we'll go through some more of the facts. I want to play a little more from this clip here. Arlen, unless you have another comment, but I want to play a little more about.
Yeah, the only comment I have, to me, it'll be most interesting to see if his lawyers are able to tell him to be quiet, because that's something that he's never been able to do. And they certainly are telling him if he's going to have a chance in this trial, he's going to have to be quiet. And that's just not Donald Trump. So we'll see what happens.
Argue that these social media posts were a violation of the gag order because they appear to refer to Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen, two likely key witnesses in this case, as, quote, sleazebags. And Trump is currently subject to an expanded gag order, which prohibits him from attacking witnesses or other key people in this case.
All right, so I'll just stop it there. We don't need to go more, but I thought I just want to show one quick image here, Arlen. And then you can comment. But I thought it was pretty funny that he called Cohen a sleazebag, and I mean the thing is they're all sleazy, right? And what I found was hilarious is that right after this segment, I just show a still from it. Jake Tapper brings Lanny Davis on. And you can see I highlighted Lanny Davis, Michael Cohen's former attorney. Nobody is sleazier than Lanny Davis. So it's not like Trump wasn't telling the truth. And the truth is an absolute defense. That said, if the judge tells you you can't, you can't start impugning witnesses, which he should not absolutely be able to do. The judge is 100% within his rights. In fact, he was, I believe, obligated to hold Trump in contempt in some way for what he's done, or at least to threaten to step him back. So I think the judge has acted appropriately, or if anything, has been a little too reticent in punishing Trump. But that said, yeah, this is an embarrassment to our judicial system, I believe.
Yeah, it's one thing to threaten Trump, but he can't do anything. He hasn't done anything, and he's very limited in his powers as to what he could do. He can't throw Trump in jail, and so
he could throw him in jail. He could lock him up for contempt of court.
That'll never happen.
I've seen judges do it. I wouldn't shock me. I understand he's a former president, but
president in jail.
Well, we've never seen this happen. This is all untried ground.
Yeah, well, I'd like to see him in jail, but I just don't see it happening.
Well, I would not want to see a former president in jail. I'm not saying he shouldn't go to jail if he breaks the law, but that said, I don't want to see it. But if it were my courtroom and I was a trial lawyer and I saw some, pretty challenging, difficult people in courtrooms, I've never seen this. I never saw the flouting of a judge's direct order ever by a witness, by a party to a case, by an attorney. I've seen attorneys go close to the law. It's really close to the edge, and it's pissed me off, and they do it to gain an edge. They think they're being smart, or I don't like it. They think they're being clever. I hate that. The judge says something, you do it, in my opinion. That you can appeal. You don't like it, you appeal. You say, Your Honor, I object. Let me tell you why. Fine, do all of that. But in the end, you have to do what the judge tells you. I've seen lawyers go close to the edge. That said, I've never seen anything like this in any trial that I ever participated in. I participate in a lot of trials. I think it would be perfectly appropriate for Trump to be stepped back for, a day.
Well, there's no question Trump is one of a kind. There's nobody else like him, and he does things that other people obviously won't do. But as far as being in jail, I'd like to see him in jail for what he did on January 6th, trying to overthrow the election. And of course, the things at Mar-a-Lago, where he was, doing all kinds of crazy things with our official documents. I think he deserves to be in jail for those things. But the question is, are those trials going to happen before the election? And so far, it doesn't look good because of all the delays and appeals. So,
all right, Arlen, let's go to the Guardian article you shared with me, and I do promise we'll get to foreign policy a little bit, what's going on in Israel. In the end, probably ultimately even more important, these stories, the story of Trump is really important. Not saying it isn't, but man, we could be looking at World War III in the Middle East. It's
bad.
It's really, really, really scary. So this is from The Guardian. I thought they did a nice job with it. I'm glad you shared this, Arlen. Kind of clarified some of my questions or doubts or confusion. The landmark people in the trial, Cohen to Stormy Daniels. So let me just put a few of these snippets up there and make it easy for people to read, and so that the whole thing. Do you want to get into this at all? I circled the red. I don't know if there's anything in particular you want to. I put in red what I thought was most important, Arlen. I don't know if there's anything to add or subtract from. You can see that, right?
Yeah, I can. I just think it was real interesting, some of the names that you don't see every day. That, for instance, Alan Weisselberg, he's going to be spending time in jail. You got David Pecker, the editor of the Inquirer. That's a pretty crazy story.
So before you get to Pecker, and that is a great name he has, by the way, and another incredibly, he almost might take the sleaziest of them all, would he not? For his this practice
just the Inquirer, even without Trump, was pretty bad. But being on Trump's side and hiding stories, and that's even worse.
It's kind of funny though that they're on his side, because what Pecker would do, he had this journalistic practice, catch and kill, where he gets these stories that are incredibly scurrilous and embarrassing for people, like the story. I don't even think, to be honest with you, I think Trump handled this so badly. I think he should have just said to her, look, we agree it was consensual. She's never once said it was, that's one thing you have to give Trump, and he has been alleged to have, right? I mean, he was convicted of sexual assault, or no, it wasn't a conviction. He was found liable for sexual assault in New York.
Correct.
But in this case, and also with Karen McDougal and other women, they've never said Trump was anything but, they were willing, right? They've always said, oh yeah, it was to the both of us. We both wanted to do it. Maybe because he was giving them money, taking them for expensive meals, whatever. It was always consensual. So,
well, not the one, no, not the one that he lost.
No, not in New York. Not in New York. You're right. Yeah. That's one clearly, but he denies having. That's kind of unfair in a way. I feel like he was unfairly charged. I'm not saying he didn't do it. What I'm saying is it's not right to charge someone 25 years after the fact, and they can't defend themselves. I thought that was an unfair case brought against him.
One thing you could say for sure, Trump is always going to deny any charge. I mean, he's very consistent about that. He's always perfect in everything he does, and he never does anything wrong, according to him. And
I don't give his denial much credence, Arlen. What I have a problem with is that he couldn't defend himself because of the passage of time. Any records, any potential witnesses could have easily been lost to time. So that to me is why you have statutes of limitations. And he was charged, 25 plus years after the alleged assault. Not saying it didn't happen. Not saying he wouldn't have denied everything just like he did, even if he were guilty. What I'm saying is, I take seriously the idea that if you are charged with an offense, or you're sued, in this case it was a lawsuit, you should have the right to defend yourself. Well,
a jury of his peers was very convinced that he had done all this, and they made him liable.
Well, they didn't find him liable for rape. There were two charges. There was sexual assault and there was rape, and they didn't find him guilty of rape. But again, that's, to my way of thinking, also why you do need statutes of limitations, because a good lawyer and a convincing witness can persuade a jury, and perhaps rightly so. It's a low standard of proof. It's only beyond, by a preponderance of the evidence is the standard. So 51-49%, and he owes millions of dollars. I don't know if that's fair.
Well,
in fact, I would argue it's not.
I'm sure there are all kinds of many cases like that where he's abused, himself on other women, and that are not in court. So if they got a good one like the one they had in New York, where they had a lot of people who remembered, her.
It was one person who remembers. It was one person who remembered. It wasn't a lot. But Arlen, to be fair, that's not how our system is supposed to work. You're not found guilty or responsible for all the things that you weren't charged with, even if you might have done them. It's for what you are charged with that you're supposed to. The court's supposed to find
now, or is there something way in the past that you're worried about that might come up? Is that what you're concerned about?
You want to make it. It's not. It sounds very ad hominem, Arlen. None of us are monks, right? We all have, I'm sure, some skeleton in our closet. Nobody's perfect. That said, again, there are reasons we have statutes of limitations, very good ones, and it wasn't, in my view, there's nothing just about the way Trump was charged. What if a prosecutor brought charges against Joe Biden based on what Tara Reade said? She said that he had raped her or penetrated her vaginally when she was an intern, and it was at about the same period of time, 1994. What if how would you have felt about a charge being brought criminally against Joe Biden?
I don't know, since nobody made that charge and nobody's brought that to court. I really can't.
But it's a similar situation. It's somebody who says, and she did say it, and she does say it. The woman named Tara Reade specifically has said when she was an intern working in the Joe Biden Senate office in 1994, I believe, which was exactly the same time frame that E. Jean Carroll says she was raped by Donald Trump. Tara Reade says that Biden sexually assaulted her, penetrated her digitally. How would you feel about a prosecutor bringing that case?
Well, yeah, that would be very uncomfortable for sure. But Tara, the difference between Carol, though, is she had a very good reputation. She was a very prominent type of person, I believe, and very believable. I don't know about Tara Reid, who she
Well,
is.
certainly that champion of women, Rachel Maddow didn't believe her or says she didn't believe her. But I don't, again, that's why you have statutes of limitations. That's the exact reason, because somebody who maybe written some books, who is perceived to be reputable, then gets to bring a lawsuit, and someone who was an intern who may have a more questionable history. Again, I don't think either one should be allowed to have should have the right to sue so far after the fact. I don't think that's right. I just think the risk of a miscarriage of justice is too great. Anyway, we can agree to disagree, but I will say this, and you can respond. I'll ask you this question. Is it possible that your very obvious animus towards Donald Trump might cause you to overlook the bigger picture because of your goal, your hope in gaffing this giant white whale?
Well, let's not forget that he's really on trial for paying off Stormy Daniels and covering it up. This particular trial we're talking about now, and and trying to do that to prevent it from coming out before the election. I mean, that's pretty obvious. I mean,
it's true. But I was talking about the other case. But okay, we can move on. We can move on to. So we talked about Trump real quick. He allegedly orchestrated a $130,000 payment. I think he did. I think it's probably true. Charged with 34 counts of falsifying business records. I don't know how Trump can deny yet. He says he denies he had an affair with her. I don't think there's any. I thought both sides said it was consensual. Didn't they both say? I guess she has always said it was consensual. He said we didn't even have sex. It's not.
Like I said before, Hal, he denies everything in his entire life, any charges. So, that's always going to happen. He's always going to deny, everything that he's charged with.
I don't know why. I don't even think that he was married at the time, right? Or had he just married Melania in 2006? I'm not really sure about that. I don't think he was even married.
Melania was having a baby at that time.
Is that right? Yeah. That sounds right. So he is really scuzzball. Let's agree.
We agree on
Why would you, if you're Donald Trump, I just think he handled this really badly. I think he should have just come clean. I don't think he should have bought anybody off or any of that nonsense. She doesn't claim he raped her. Why not just say, yeah, all right, I had an affair with this woman. I'm sorry. And that's the end of it. His wife wouldn't like it, but would it have kept him from being president? I doubt it.
Again, he's being charged with covering it up in order to prevent it from coming out before the election. So that's the major thing that.
Oh no, I understand, but why cover it up? Why do that? Why not just be upfront? Just concede you did, or deny it. If he's going to say I never had sex with her, then why pay her off in the first place? Now he's going to say I didn't, right? His answer is I didn't. But let's just assuming for the moment he did. Better for him to just say, because he's going to deny it anyway, she's crazy. I never had sex with her. It's not true. Now, maybe she has records that prove it. If she does, then come clean and say, yeah, we had sex. But for him to buy her off and pay hundreds of thousands, that to me was, well, he's not very smart. He's not real. He didn't really think through how to handle things in the most effective way possible. He really hurt himself this way.
Yeah, you're right about that. He doesn't really think these things out. He thinks he could get away with everything. And in the past, he has pretty much gotten away with so many things. And here he had Michael Cohen to do his work. And, now Michael Cohen is coming clean and we know more about it. But, Trump certainly felt it wouldn't be a problem to get away with something like that.
Well, let me ask you this, Arlen. Do you think if Trump had not paid Stormy Daniels off and the story had been published by his buddy Pecker, if that had happened, do you think that would have cost Trump the election?
Probably not, because he's done far worse. You remember, that initial thing about if you're famous, you can grab a woman's, what. So, he's gotten away with all kinds of things, and his base just doesn't blame him.
Well, if you were in his base, let me put it, would you? Well, let me ask you this. Let's say that Joe Biden had acknowledged that he didn't say it was, because this is very different between Stormy Daniels and Joe Biden. It's very different because Stormy Daniels is consensual. Joe Biden, allegedly, it wasn't consensual with Tara Reade. But let's say she had said, well, I was young. It was like a Monica Lewinsky type situation where she was an intern. She said, yes, I was agreeable, but still it looks really bad. He's the supervisor. Because the Stormy Daniels it only looks bad because he's married. Otherwise, like, who really cares, right? I mean, I don't care. He has sleep with 20, she's an adult, she's 27 years old. She says it was consensual, so I don't see there's an issue, except that he betrayed his marriage vows, and that's not my problem. That said, what if Joe Biden had said, because you're saying Trump's base would have not cared. Would you have cared if Joe Biden had engaged in a consensual relationship outside of his marriage?
That would certainly change his image among everybody.
But would you care? Would you have considered not voting for him because of that, especially if he was running against Trump?
Possibly. I don't think he would even be, anywhere near the presidency if that had come out.
Arlen, there's no way you would have not voted for Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. Well, if Joe Biden had somehow been revealed to have had a consensual relationship with I hate to even use the term porn star because they say it so dismissively, but an adult film star like Stormy Daniels, if Joe Biden had said, yes, I had a relationship with an adult film star, you would have still voted for him in a heartbeat against Donald Trump.
Hell, I would vote for you if you were running against Donald
so
Trump.
Then how can you condemn Trump's voters for making the opposite decision, that they would vote for him because they didn't want Biden to be president or they didn't want Hillary to be president?
Well, his voters don't pay any attention to anything. I mean, there's so many things that he's done and so much evidence of all the bad things he's done, but they don't care. They're willing to go along with it anyway. Some people, think he's like a religious figure that's been sent by God to, save the country. So what are you going to do about that? Those people will never be, they won't change their mind.
Arlen, does it hurt the case against Trump that he never signed that non-disclosure agreement with Stormy Daniels, didn't sign any checks? This check that Michael Cohen gave her, Michael Cohen signed, and he even said when he even said he did it. Now, it's hard to believe this could be true, but he says it was a gift. He said, I really like the Donald. He's a close friend, and I would have done it for, I did it for him because of my love for him and his family. Which I guess is plausible. I don't want Melania to know that he was cheating on her when she was pregnant and had Barron.
Well, Stormy Daniels was getting that money from either, Michael Cohen, who for no reason, or from Donald Trump. It just looks bad.
If it's not from Donald Trump, you can't convict him, right? If Michael Cohen somehow made a decision on his own that this was a gift from him to Donald Trump, one that he would never even tell Trump about, then you can't convict Trump if that's true. I mean, it doesn't sound plausible.
No, it doesn't sound plausible. No, we're having a court case, it's just something that we have to wait and see. We're having a court case now.
Do you think? I mean, the charge that he falsified records was for the fraudulent purpose of defrauding the Federal Election Commission, which otherwise he would have an obligation to tell. He spent that money because it was a campaign. It was a campaign expenditure, right? Any kind of time you spend money in any way that you think will help you win your election for that purpose, you have to tell the FEC. And usually it's you buy advertising on TV, or you have some sort of a promotional campaign. You're flying from Des Moines to Peoria, so you have to pay for the gas on the airplane. So those kind of expenditures you have to tell the FEC about. The FEC, do you think the federal election laws really contemplate hush money paid to a woman you had an affair with to keep her quiet?
Well, we're going to find out, aren't we? Apparently that is illegal, and that's what Alvin Bragg is saying, and he's going to go.
Well, it's not illegal. It wasn't illegal for him to pay her to pull the story. That's not illegal. Well, you can do that. You can do that. What was illegal is him not reporting it to the Federal Election Commission and him also allegedly falsifying business records to keep the FEC from learning about the money.
Yeah. Well, I think it's pretty obvious what he did. It's not really that much in dispute. So we'll see how they do in court.
I mean, do you think that should be illegal?
Yeah, I do. I think anytime you're doing something that's falsified and it's not real and it's for the purpose of helping you cover something up in the election campaign, I think that should be illegal.
Well, I agree. I think if he somehow took I guess one question I have is, did he really how did that money get from him to Michael Cohen? If it really came from him, is there a paper trail? That's, to me, if I'm on that jury, one thing I want to see, I want an explanation for how the money went from Trump to Cohen. Like, did Cohen pad was there an expense? This is $130,000 in one of the bills. Because Cohen was billing Trump right every month. He's his lawyer. He sends him a bill. So I want to know from Cohen, okay, where, and show me the check, show me the payment that comprehends that 130. I'd really like to see it. I agree. It looks really bad for Trump, but beyond a reasonable doubt, it's a high standard. So I want to know where the money is.
Well, I think probably Ellen Weiselberg has something to do with the money.
Who's that? You mentioned that name. Who's that?
Pardon?
Who is that person?
Oh, his accountant, who's going to be spending I think 5 months or something like that in jail, because he was Trump's accountant his whole career. So, he knows a lot of things and he's done a lot of things. So he's in trouble for that. But,
well, what did he do? Can you give me an example? That's really fascinating to me, that this accountant, I mean, what was he? That's really, he was signing off on statements that were, not legit, that kind of thing?
Yeah, apparently so, yeah. And, I mean, if you're Trump's accountant, there's going to be a lot of illegal things going on, or certainly questionable things going on. But I think, this whole case is really not nearly as important as the bigger cases, like I mentioned before, about trying to, the January 6th and the official documents in Mar-a-Lago. I think those are by far, bigger cases that should go to trial, but unfortunately they keep getting pushed till after the election by Trump and his people, Trump and his lawyers. So this is all we got.
Let me just answer the question I presented earlier, which was how did the money get from Trump to Cohen? And the Guardian, and I actually circled it. I should have remembered this or known it, but right there, well, Trump arranged to pay him back in monthly payment installments of $35,000. So that's where the records were. That's how the concealment occurred. Yeah. And so that's really serious. If it had been from Trump's private bank account, I'd be like, well, he still would be concealing them, because if he's paying out of his own private personal account, hush money designed to facilitate his election, that's still a federal expenditure. I don't love it. I don't like that law in particular, but I think it does meet the very broad definition of what a federal election campaign expense is. So I accept that. But it's worse if he somehow doctors the records that he actually presents, not just doesn't include, but he actually changes the memoranda notes on it. So it's bad. Yeah, clearly very bad. And Trump's in a lot of trouble. Assuming this is accurate, assuming that those payments were made for the purpose of the payoff to Daniels and the records were falsified.
I don't think Trump handles any of his own money. He has other people do these things for him, and they know what to do, and he expects them to know what to do. So, he pretty much, cleans his hands of all that stuff and tries to keep, far away from it if he can, and let others do it for him. He's not going to write personal checks. So anyway, that's something that's
interesting. That's an interesting comment. Well, then if he didn't, presumably whoever did will have to testify that they did so under his implicit or explicit
orders. That's what's going to happen. That's what Michael Cohen's going to say.
It's really interesting. So, Arlen, just real quick, you'd prefer to see Trump on trial for the illegal records retention, or even more so, January 6th. Let me say, without arguing those, for me, the most clear-cut violation of the law Trump engaged in was election fraud when he was calling Georgia state officials and telling them to find votes for him and can't you change the results and can't you do this? And it was clear he was suborning some type of perjury or some type of illegal statements and illegal record of keeping by these officials, and for the express purpose of of overturning a democratic election. So to me, that's the worst thing he did. That, along with just locking people up in illegally, denying them due process in
and I think
jails in Mexico.
I think the fake electors is certainly a prominent thing that happened that proved, pretty much proves that they were trying to change the election.
Do you need to even go there? He calls the Georgia State Attorney, Secretary of State, Brad Ravensburger, and says, "Can't you find some votes for me?" I mean, it was very, very clear he was conspiring to steal the election.
Yeah, I would like to
conspiring to violate the officials' obligations under Georgia state law. So I think that, to me, is the worst thing he did. That would you'd have the strongest case.
You're right. That's a big one. But, again, they keep, Trump's lawyers keep pushing it back and back. And then you got the thing with, Fannie Willis and her, personal life and all that apparently slowed things down. So all those cases, unfortunately, are going to happen probably after the election, which is
I'm with you. It's very unfortunate. And especially the Fannie Willis situation, which, to be fair, she brought on herself. Her behavior was outrageous, but I'm not clear how it hurt Trump. Again, the court in that case, and I think you posted on your thebigpicturereport.com, I think you posted that Judge Cannon is clearly should have probably recused himself, given that he is a Trump appointee.
She is, yeah. She definitely is.
Or she, I'm sorry, she.
Yeah, but yeah, she gives every indication that she's going to help him in any way possible. And I think it would be, it's unfair. I think that any judge appointed by a president, should be in judging a case. I think, they should have somebody more neutral, but that's not the way it goes.
Well, Arlen, it was just absolutely horrible the way Justice Roberts ruled for, what was it? I guess he had one decision. He did rule in Bush v. Gore, and he didn't rule in Bush v. Gore, but Justice Roberts made his name in Florida by defending Gore in Bush, by representing Bush in Bush v. Gore, and that's how he got on the court, and that's very problematic. I think there were some other situations like that where maybe I'm overstating. That is what happened. It was outrageous, but I'm not clear if there was a clear-cut conflict of interest with Justice Roberts. There probably was. I'm just not sure what it was.
There's a lot of people in the Supreme Court that are very questionable, and their conduct and how they got promoted, and it's just the Supreme Court has really gone downhill in the eyes of the American people, and understandably.
No, in reality, yeah, and it's. The worst is Thomas, I think. He's really the most blatantly, overtly corrupt, and it's outrageous.
Yeah, and he's not.
But if you want to blame, look no further than the Oval Office right now. If you want to blame someone for Justice Thomas, Joe Biden ran interference for him. Joe Biden he had a lot of influence. He was on the Senate Judiciary panel, and he called off the Democratic dogs and ultimately supported Thomas for justice.
Yeah, he's made a lot of mistakes because he's been in office like 50 years or so. So, but yeah, I'm sure that's one he especially regrets.
That's a big mistake. That's a big one, Arlen. You can't give, at some point, that's a big one. That's hard to.
It is.
All right.
I'm not
watching. Go ahead.
I just want you to know I'm not a big Joe Biden fan. I mean, he's certainly not my favorite person. He would not be the one I want to be as president now. But compared to the alternate, I like Joe Biden.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Let's get to our next story, and I kind of billboarded it: Middle East meltdown. Arlen, Israel attacked Iran. I think with a lot of the American media isn't really saying this out loud, but probably was illegal the way Israel attacked Iran, bombing an embassy. I know the New York Times is trying to finesse it, saying, well, they're an enemy combatant. They're helping Gaza in the war, sort of war, really just. And this is why I reject all those arguments. I wanted to just start with this image. The red there, that's as of April 2, 2024. Those red buildings are the areas where Israel has caused harm. So 50% of Gaza has been laid waste to. And I don't know how that record tells you, in my view, that what Iran is doing in trying to help Gaza is hardly what you'd call some sort of act of war against Israel. It's the opposite. They're trying to protect Gaza. And Israel just went after them in Syria, violating the sovereignty of two countries, Syria, a country they're definitely not at war with, and Iran. So how can Israel be defended in these circumstances? I mean, if you want to try, go ahead. If you don't think they should be, tell us that.
No, they are wrong. They retaliated in entirely, overkill. I mean, it's disproportionate to what happened to Israel. Now, Israel, of course, needs to defend itself from the October 7th attack by Hamas, but they've gone way overboard and way past in proportion what they should happen, because I think only about 1,200 people were killed in the attack on Israel, but the word is over 30,000 Gazan citizens have been killed, and most of them women and children, and that's just indefensible.
What do you think of the attack on the embassy in Syria, the Iranian embassy? Do you have a reaction to that?
Well, I hate to see all that, because these things, tend to, escalate and get, worse when, one country will say, we'll do something, the other one will try to, do something more, and it just escalates. And we certainly don't want a regional war there. And I think most countries don't want it. I don't think even Iran or Israel really wants it. Although Israel, who knows? Because Netanyahu...
You do wonder at this point, is Netanyahu really trying to broaden this into some kind of, regional, or perhaps even greater than that, hemisphere-wide war? It almost feels like it.
Well, I think Netanyahu reminds me a little bit of Trump. He's only concerned about himself. He's in trouble politically, and he wants to do whatever he can to make sure he stays in office, just like, Trump kind of does. So, he's the problem. Netanyahu is just a right-winger with a right-wing government, and he needs to get out of there. And people in Israel are protesting, understandably, but it's kind of hard. They have their own rules about elections, so it's not easy to get rid of him.
All right, agreed. I agree with you on Netanyahu. In light of the view, I think that we share, but that maybe most people share, that in fact, we know most people in Israel want him out, right? He is supported by maybe a third now of the Israeli public believe he should remain prime minister, perhaps less. Or is it president? I guess he's president, right? President. They use the same
I'm not
term.
sure. Yeah.
So maybe it's it's PM, prime minister. So here's my question. Given that, do you feel that this op-ed published in the New York Times on Saturday, online, in yesterday's paper, Sunday, do you think it's strong enough to just say the military aid to Israel cannot be unconditional? Or would you have liked to have seen them go further and say we should no longer be providing aid to Israel?
I'm very disappointed in Joe Biden regarding all this stuff. He just let Israel do whatever they wanted, and he's got the clout, he's got the weapons, and all he would have to do is say, hey, we're going to cut back on our weapons that we give you if you don't do what we would like you to do. But Biden so far has been just talk, and I'd like to see action, and I think a lot of people want to see real action.
Well, what about? And I agree with that. I'm just curious about the times as well, and we can go through it. I'll just say I did not. I mean, I agree that military aid to Israel should not be unconditional, and it still is. That's what's so amazing. I mean, Joe Biden has wrung his hands, and he's made some statements that, critical of Israel for sure. And he's gotten blowback. It's amazing. AIPAC is, he's getting blowback for that. I also will say this, Trump is really worse on this issue. As bad as Biden, but the thing is, how much worse can you be, right? How much worse can you be than, I mean, he provides complete support for Israel, does Biden, and Trump saying that's not good enough. You can't just provide complete support. You can't even scold them. So I guess that makes Trump worse. But putting all that aside, I feel like, I'll say this, I think the New York Times editorial didn't go nearly far enough either.
Well, yeah, you may be right about that because, Biden has to show some real commitment to what he says. He says all the right things, but until he actually does something and withholds some weapons, Netanyahu is going to feel free to do whatever he wants.
Yeah, I don't mean that the Times should have been more critical of Biden. I mean that they're, I think, still too supportive of Israel. Even though they're saying we should put a pause on military aid transfers to Israel, which I was very pleased to read that. I don't think at this point it's fair to say that our commitment to Israel is at this point should be substantial and that it's been mutually beneficial and essential. I don't think this benefits us right now. This the way Israel is, our relationship is not beneficial to us, I don't believe.
Certainly at this moment, no, it's really bad. Biden is just not doing what he should be doing, and a lot of people are criticizing him, understandably. So, up to now, I mean, I think it's right for the U.S. to, make sure that Israel exists and is, able to stay the country that it is. But now they've gone too far.
Well, the statement too that, and you mentioned, and this is following what you said, that Israel deserves existence. That follows or tracks what the Times says, New York Times, no president or Congress should deny the only state on earth with a Jewish majority the means to ensure its survival. I have a problem with that, and I'll tell you why. Because that state right now, it's not just denying, it's actually taking away the existence of another. It's eradicating a region on its borders. And so to me, again, the focus, I have a problem with that focus. The focus to me should right now be on what Israel's doing in Gaza, and that has to end right now, today. Not, we've got to protect Israel, but also Israel's not. That's where I come down. I just look at this as a crisis of moral crisis of extraordinary proportions.
Yeah, what Israel doing is indefensible. What Netanyahu has done, he's allowed all this to happen. He let he was supportive of Hamas. He was giving money to Hamas before they attacked, and he's always been against a two-state solution. And it seems like he might be still trying to push all the Gaza people out of Palestine. So I mean, what he's doing is just inexcusable, and he should be condemned, and Israel should be condemned. And I just hope somewhere along the line, the government there or the people there will, change the course, which is very bad right now.
All right, Arlen, so we pretty much agree on all of this. There's really no point, I guess, in belaboring that. But I do want to play, we started with Trump, let's end with Trump. Here he is at a rally, and then you can comment on this. But this goes to that issue of, is Trump even worse? The question, is Trump even worse than Biden on this issue?
Before going any further, I want to say God bless the people of Israel. They're under attack right now. That's because we show great weakness. This would not happen. The weakness that we've shown is unbelievable, and it would not have happened if we were in office. You know that. They know that. Everybody knows that.
Could you hear it? Yeah, it's really bad, and I'm sorry.
You had it fine before, but right now
this is a different video, and it's just not a good one. Let me see. For whatever reason, I'm not going to take I don't believe this is on me. Let me try it one more time, but if we can't, I'll show you the subtitles. Maybe you can read those. We'll go back and just try it one more time, because I really do want to play it, because it is quite astonishing. Trump is blaming everything that's happening in Israel, including, or in Gaza and Israel, including the attack You know what? I'll just tell you why play crappy audio, Arlen. He starts off by saying this never would have happened, meaning October 6th wouldn't have, October 7th, right? January 6th, October 7th would have never happened if he had been president, which everybody knows. And I was like, really? How do I know? Where does it? So that seemed absurd. But then he goes on to say that, Israel deserves our complete 100% unwavering support without any criticism whatsoever.
Yeah, well, Trump always says, well, everything would be better if I was president. There wouldn't be any wars anywhere, and everything would be, perfect and all that. So that's very typical Trump. But when I hear him talk, on the cuff or off the cuff, is it? He just sounds like he's getting worse. He's getting more demented, I think, and he just cannot really articulate anything intelligent that I've ever heard him try. So, he's, I hope the American people can see, that he is getting worse and worse.
I'm going to throw you a bone, Arlen. When I watch Trump, when I follow Trump stories, I start to think, maybe Joe Biden ain't that bad. But then I go back and I read about Biden and listen to him, and I'm like, yeah, he is. It's not. We're not in a good place right now. I understand the argument that Trump is qualitatively different, that he's somehow other, even compared to presidents like Reagan and George W. Bush. I understand that argument. I just ultimately don't agree with it.
Well, the American people do not like this coming election. They don't want to see the same people running this as they were, in 2020, and people are unhappy. They don't want to see these two old guys running who don't seem like they're doing great and don't seem to be very competent, and they're too old. So yeah, the American people are very unhappy about this situation. Again, this goes back to our political system, which really needs some revision, and it really needs to be overhauled.
Do you have optimism for 2028? At which point, assuming, let's either Joe Biden or Donald Trump will have served 2 terms in 2028. Assuming that if it is Trump who wins, and I certainly hope it isn't, but if it is Trump who wins, hopefully he'll step down. He will not try to remain tyrant, or whatever term you want to use, or impose a anti-democratic tyranny. Assuming whoever is president in 2028 does not try to stay in office, are you optimistic that we could get significantly better in 2028 going forward? And let's assume, when I say significantly better than Joe Biden, because I know you would say just about anyone's better than Trump, but let's throw him out. Do you have optimism we could get somebody who you would feel proud was our president?
I don't feel very confident about that. What worries me right now, even if Trump loses, you still have a Republican Party that's very strong MAGA, and these people are not going to go away. There's going to be all this right-wing Trump, pro-Trump media out there that seem to push, everything, lie without any problem. They just keep telling all the horrible things, and they seem, and there's a certain segment of our population that is willing to accept all that. And so, no, I think we're in a bad spot right now. I think,
Well, Arlen, though, let me just, I know I said I'll let you speak, but now I'm going to just sort of trailing off a little bit, and I want to focus you. Do you see, I understand the Republicans have made clear they'll vote for bad people that shouldn't be president. Do you think there's a Democrat in the offing, or there could be a Democrat in the offing who will run in 28, who could win, that you think would really make things better for the American people?
I think there's some very good people out there, Democratic governors, Democratic senators, and so on, that could do, a very good job, and then they wouldn't be 81 years old. But and I think the Democratic Party needs some changes. They're definitely, like we've talked about, they're too corporate, focused, and they need to be more on the side of the working people and unions, and And so I think the Democratic Party has to make some changes. Otherwise, they're not going to go very far.
All right, Arlen, that's all I got to ask you. I don't have anything to throw on top of what you just said. I do ask people, check out thebigpicturereport.com. I didn't show you thebigpicturereport.com because it wasn't really germane to the topics today. But if you want to promote something, Arlen, go ahead.
No, just I like seeing the pundit thought leader. That gives
yes, thought. Maybe we should go thought leader before pundit. We could do it that way.
We could try different weeks, different
right.
ways of doing it.
All right, I enjoyed the conversation, Arlen. Thanks for your contributions. Very appreciated indeed. I'll be back tomorrow. I just want to let people know real quick. I'm going to return to the topic of Dean Erwin Chemerinsky and his wife Catherine Fisk, the assault on the guest at their house last week in Cal. And I want to just say I'm going to pull back a little bit. I was very critical of Chemerinsky and his wife. I still have real problems with the way they responded to the Palestinian student. Her name is Afa. I have real problems with the way they respond to her, especially, and I always did more with Professor Fisk's physical response. She actually put her hands on Afa. She shouldn't have done that. I'm not going to try to excuse that. But I get a little bit more after doing a deep dive into all the stories that I could find why Chemerinsky was really upset. I feel like he has behaved in the past few years better than I had thought, especially when it comes to the Palestinian issue. And he wasn't a good target. I understand why they targeted him. I'm not saying they were wrong to do it, but that said, he has been pretty much an ally of the Palestinian movement, and I think it was unfair the way he was targeted. That's my perception. I want to go over it tomorrow because I like to get things right, and if I'm wrong, I want to correct the record. That's going to do it, Arlen. We'll see you next week.
Yeah. I enjoyed the hour. Thanks, Al.
All right, try to be a little bit better, and I actually feel better about myself as a human being now, so I can sleep better. So we'll see Arlen next. Listen, I got to be nice to Arlen because he's like the only one who'll come on the show. I mean, what if I lost him? No, that's not true. No. Well, that is true, but I like to be a nice. I want to think of myself as a nice person, and sometimes I fail. All right, Arlen. We'll see you next week, and I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks, folks. Take care.